All right, folks, brace yourselves because this is truly inspirational. Following yesterday's bombshell announcement by incumbent Republican Senator from North Carolina, Tom Tillis, that he will not be seeking re-election in the 2026 midterms after repeated personal clashes with Donald Trump, the non-MAGA or less MAGA elements of the Republican Party are openly panicking that not only will Democrats flip North Carolina, but that Trump has inadvertently put in control of the entire Senate in play. And that if Democrats retake control of the Senate, not only will the last 2 years of the Trump administration be effectively dead for the right wing, but if there's a vacancy on the Supreme Court in those final 2 years, this is the best part, a Democratic Senate majority will block Trump from filling any of those vacancies, doing to Trump and the Republicans what they did to us in 2016 and in 2020. This is glorious, but before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, folks, I am very inspired by this, and so should you. Again, it's a bunch of if, then, else. Nothing is set in stone. You know, I'm not even saying it's probable because a lot of things have to happen for this to occur. But this is very possible. This is a timeline in the multiverse, one of many that we could see come to fruition. Now, before we get to this op-ed from the conservative Wall Street Journal, their editorial board, as they panic about what Trump has done, let's get to some of Trump's more recent reactions. So in the aftermath of Tom Tillis announcing that he won't seek re-election, Trump actually stupidly took a victory lap. He said, "Great news. Quote unquote, Senator Tom Tillis will not be seeking re-election." Now, again, I don't think he's truly considered the challenge ahead of him, but he's taken a victory lap. In response, Senator Tom Tillis responded sarcastically. He said, "Thanks for the retirement wishes, Mr. President. Looking forward to working with you for a successful 2026. Word to the wise, let's avoid Mini Soldier." Mini Soldier was the online username of former Republican Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, Mark Robinson, who was perhaps the most deranged MAGA candidate in the field last year besides Trump himself, and whom Trump endorsed for governor of North Carolina purely because he's a diehard MAGA loyalist on par with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Carrie Lake. It was later revealed that Mark Robinson was a prolific internet user, we should say, and under the alias Mini Soldier online, went to a number of very, salacious websites and defended slavery, referred to himself as a black Nazi, and yada, yada, and Trump stuck by him. And of course, he got shellacked in the gubernatorial race last year. So what Tom Tillis is doing here is like, hey, you're an idiot when it comes to picking candidates, and if you follow your instincts here like you have before Trump, you're going to cost the Republican Party North Carolina. So, sarcastic response by Tom Tillis. Now, again, just to give you some context about where things stand right now. Let's see. The Cook report previously said that the race leaned Republican 2026, right? Because even though North Carolina is a purplish state, right? Ever since President Obama in 2008, Democrats haven't gained any sort of meaningful federal positions, right? We tend to dominate the gubernatorial races, but thanks to gerrymandering in the state by Republicans, they have worked the federal advantage to their favor. The congressional split, it used to be 14 seats and 7 represented Republicans, 7 represented Democrats. Republicans in North Carolina gerrymandered the hell out of it and took like 3 seats out to pack for the Republicans. And Republicans have represented the state in the Senate for, I believe, 17 years, okay? So when you factor all these in, even though it is a purple state, Republicans do have a slight advantage, okay? Especially with an incumbent senator like Tom Tillis, who has won under difficult circumstances. But now Newsweek reports it's adjusted its analysis, Cook report, and described it as a toss-up, meaning it could go either way. Former Governor Roy Cooper, a Democrat, is to decide whether he will run for the seat, according to reports, while former Democratic Representative Wiley Nickel is running for the seat already. No polls have been released since Tillis said he would not stand again, but a previous poll suggested Cooper could beat Tillis. Governor Cooper, of course, being a very popular former governor until last year, as a matter of fact, 2 terms. What people are saying. Richard Johnson, a senior lecturer in U.S. politics and policy at Queen Mary University of London in the UK, said that, quote, the seat was, quote, eminently possible as a Democratic pickup. Democrats have polled at 47% at least in all of the recent major statewide contests, president, Senate, governor. Democrats have now won the gubernatorial election 3 times in a row. In the Cook Political Report, analyst Jessica Taylor wrote, quote, "The surprise move from Tillis moves this race into the toss-up category and officially makes the Tar Heel State Democrats' top pickup opportunity." And other analysts indicate that it actually leans Democrat at the moment because with a vacant field and Cooper waiting in the wings, he has the advantage. But of course, we'll see what happens. Nothing is set in stone. And with that in mind, though, I want to get to this bombshell op-ed by the Wall Street Journal editorial board. So it says, now remember, this is the sister publication of Fox News. Fox News, okay? Trump puts the Senate in play in 2026. By helping drive Thom Tillis into retirement, he puts his presidency at risk. This is from the editorial board. A common feature of Donald Trump's 2 terms as president is that he can't stand political prosperity. When events are going in his direction, he has the uncanny habit of handing his opponents a sword. The latest example came Sunday after GOP leaders dragged several holdouts across the line to vote aye and start debate over the Senate version of the budget reconciliation bill. The vote was 51-49, but Trump couldn't leave victory alone. Instead, he unloaded on the 2 GOP dissenters, Rand Paul of Kentucky and especially Thom Tillis of North Carolina. Trump dumped 3 Truth Social posts on Tillis, calling him a sellout, a quote talker and complainer, and various other insults. He also all but promised to support a Republican opponent in the GOP primary for Senate in 2026 when Tillis' term ends. Quote, "Numerous people have come forward wanting to run in the primary against Senator Thom Tillis," Trump said on Truth Social. Quote, "I will be meeting with them over the coming weeks, looking for someone who will properly represent the great people of North Carolina." Tillis promptly said he won't run for re-election. Even if Tillis had already been contemplating retirement, his withdrawal opens a seat that is another pickup opportunity for Democrats next year. The GOP has a 53-47 majority now, but Susan Collins always has a tough race in Maine if she decides to run again. Democrats are targeting Joni Ernst in Iowa. In the Suicide Isn't Painless department, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is challenging GOP incumbent Senator John Cornyn. Paxton may be the only Republican who could lose in Texas, given his record harassing business with lawsuits, impeachment, and other embarrassments. The GOP pickup opportunities are few, so with Tillis' departure in the Senate is in play for 2026. Oh, and on Saturday, GOP Representative Don Bacon said he won't run for re-election in his swing Omaha seat. That's a likely gain for Democrats in the House. Messrs. Tillis and Bacon didn't help themselves by echoing Democratic attacks against the GOP's very modest Medicaid changes. Again, this is a conservative publication. But then Trump and the GOP leaders haven't helped them or the party by failing to make the moral and fiscal case for those reforms. This is the key part. You ready for inspiration? Right here. GOP legislative reforms will have no chance if Democrats take the House in 2026. And if they also take the Senate, forget about confirming another Supreme Court nominee. The Trump presidency will be dead in the water. Folks, this is the big part right here. The less MAGA or non-MAGA elements of the Republican Party are panicking because not that failure for them is certain, not that Democratic victory is guaranteed, but it meaningfully increases the likelihood of not only biting into the Republican majority in the Senate, and again, with Bacon's announcing that he's retiring, it makes it even more likely that Democrats flip the House, which is more likely than not as of this moment anyway. The Senate was always going to be tough. So now, because of Trump driving out Tillis and Bacon, he has meaningfully increased the chances that he loses both chambers. And the key part about the Supreme Court is really something, quite frankly, I hadn't thought about when I was covering these videos yesterday. Because if Democrats take over the Senate in the last 2 years of Trump's presidency, if there's a Supreme Court vacancy during those 2 years, Trump is screwed. Because one thing I'm fairly confident, I'm very confident, I probably shouldn't be, but I feel like at this point, even the Democratic Party is pissed off enough and has lost its patience that, as the Wall Street Journal fears, they will not give Trump a vacancy. And we should put the pressure on them. Hey, Democrats, if you do take the Senate in 2026, you don't give that man a vacancy. You do to them what they did to us twice. And they did do it to us twice. In 2016, under President Obama, they decided not to have a hearing for President Obama's Supreme Court nominee, Merrick Garland, because it was an election year. That was their logic. And we'll get to this in just a minute. I have a clip from Mitch McConnell's own biographer, a man who has worked with McConnell, interviewed McConnell, read McConnell's journals, read McConnell's diaries, probed everything around McConnell, a man who understands McConnell better than anybody. He's writing the definitive biography of McConnell. He makes it very clear that what McConnell did. But they created this rule that you can't have, a Supreme Court nominee during an election year. And then they broke that rule in 2020, another election year, to steal another Supreme Court seat. And that was after Lindsey Graham said, guys, don't worry. Don't worry. Listen, in 2020, we won't break our rule if there's a vacancy under Trump. It's an election year, so we won't have a hearing. They lied. And they stole the Supreme Court. The reason we have a 6-3 conservative supermajority is because of what the Wall Street Journal is now afraid the Democrats will do to Trump the moment they get the opportunity, that they will not give him a vacancy, fill his vacancy the last year or the second to last year in office. And I love that. Love that. I love that they're afraid about that. And Democrats should make them afraid about that. And again, as a reminder, this is what then Senate Republican Majority Leader Mitch McConnell did in terms of stealing these seats, according to McConnell's own biographer.
This was the sheer exercise of power that was a total concoction to give the gloss of authority for what he wanted to do.
Michael Tackett is McConnell's biographer. He has called McConnell's blocking of Garland brutish and told us that the decision was an unusually impulsive one.
Senator McConnell and his wife Elaine Chao were taking a rare vacation in the Caribbean when they found out that Justice Scalia had died. They landed and he looked at his phone and he saw the news. And by the time he was in his hotel room, he was telling his staff, we need to put out a statement. His decision was that this seat will not be filled. So he announces this rather impulsive decision. And then he realizes we have to have a rationale for that decision. So he tells his staff, look at the history books, find us a rationale, find us some justification for this argument.
After the fact, after he announced it.
And the justification was you can't do this when the White House and the Senate are of different parties and it's a presidential election year.
So he can't argue that that's why he did it.
Now, this was really an on-the-fly, as I say, impulsive kind of action. But then he ended up finding a justification for it. He voted for Scalia to be on.
And then I will point out, initially, it was simply that it was an election year. In all of his preliminary announcements, it was because it's an election year, let the people decide. Then eventually, he modified that rationale and said, okay, not only is it an election year, but the White House is controlled by Democrats and the Republicans control the Senate, and that's the other thing. If you gave him enough time, he was going to be like, well, listen, we don't fill vacancies when there's a waning gibbous moon, right? Just total bullshit, according to McConnell's own biographer. So, folks, I felt really energized by this because that's not only flipping North Carolina is just objectively great in and of itself. Flipping the Senate collectively is just objectively good in and of itself. But this part right here, I want you all to imagine, this should motivate you to vote, to encourage others to vote, to get out the vote, to register to vote, to really push people, especially in my state again, North Carolina, and to donate as well, to do whatever it is you need to for Democrats to win, because not only are all those other things great, but just imagine the schadenfreude that you and I and all of us deserve, and how we can finally give Republicans a taste of their own medicine. Again, not guaranteed, and it's possible that if Democrats win the midterms, that there will be strategic retirement announcements from Clarence Thomas or Alito. That could very well happen. But there is a timeline, folks, that we take control of the Senate by flipping North Carolina and other states and defending the ones that are vulnerable. And there's a vacancy on Trump's watch in the Supreme Court. and we can do to them what they did to us twice, and thus send the signal. You want to play ruthless politics? We are finally willing to play ruthless politics back, and you're not going to like it. Good shit. They're panicking about this. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.